Well, good morning. It's Alan Bourke here from the Bourke's podcast, and it's titled Perth Property Pod. And today I haven't got Joe Mucci with me, but I have Ash Coleman, who's the director and owner of BCI WA. We're going to talk about building inspections, and I've asked Ash to come along. Ash, perhaps before we run into building inspections, let's talk about you and your company. How long have you been in business?
Sure, thanks, Alan, and thanks for having me on your Perth Property Pod. BCI WA have been in business for almost 30 years in Western Australia. It was started originally by my father-in-law, John Firth, and myself and Joanna got into this probably about 10 years ago when John retired. So we have, so there's a lot of longevity in the brand, and we have inspectors that range from having been with us for 23 odd years now, pretty much down to 5 years, but one of those has come back. He was with us 10 years ago. So our inspectors have been with us for a long time, and pretty much love what they do.
What qualifications have they got to have, Ash?
So for our company, we have a minimum qualification of a registered builder with minimum of 20 years experience in the industry. So we want our inspectors to have built their own homes, been working as, well, they usually start out as a trade, whether it be a bricklayer, a roof carpenter, whatnot, and then they moved into being registered builders many years ago. And then they usually come to us towards, after being in the industry for 20 years or so, and then they're looking to have a change. And building inspections is often a very good fit for someone like that.
So when you buy a property and the offer and acceptance says, okay, subject to a building report, the conditions that you have on there is that the building report has got to be conducted by a licensed builder, architect, someone else that is also qualified. But we do see people working under somebody else's license at times, don't we?
That's a really good point, Alan. The Australian standards 4349 for pre-purchase building inspections have been around for a long time. What you are probably thinking of is the previous, prior to the Australian standards being revised in 2007, that is what they required, a minimum of a registered builder, engineer, architect, or building surveyor. However, in 2007, for reasons unknown to ourselves at BCI WA, when the Australian standards were revised, it changed to a suitably qualified person.
Wow. So it's vague, isn't it?
It's very vague.
Yeah.
So now there are companies out there that will, for example, if you're a teacher and decide you want to change industries, some companies will do a 2-week course, and then you're out doing structural inspections of houses.
Wow. Okay. I had mine inspected. I want a builder. I want a qualified builder. I think that's the minimum standard. So
we want that minimum standard, and we've always stayed with that with BCI.
Wise move. Okay. Let's just talk about why would I get a building inspection done on my house?
Look, effectively, you're spending a lot of money on a house, aren't you? Prices have been increasing more and more. That's exactly right, And thank goodness in WA we're half the median price of the East Coast. But look, one of the often used examples is you'll spend $300 odd getting a vehicle checked before you purchase a car, and you may be spending $30,000 on a car and $300 on a car inspection. For a little over twice that much, you can have your building inspected, and you might be spending $500,000 on a house,
which is 10 to 15 times more than that sort of number.
Absolutely, yeah. For a standard, single-story 4x2 home, you get a building and a qualified pest inspector head around as well for $650, $670.
Okay. Now, at the same time, we recommend you get a termite or a timber pest inspection done. A couple of hundred, 250. What are they worth now?
220. We depends on the company and things like that. We've been told ourselves that we're very competitive so it's $220.
Termite inspection as part of your business, or do you outsource that to somebody else?
We outsource that. So we've got a couple of licensed and insured timber pest inspection companies we will coordinate them to attend at the same time as our building.
That's really useful. Rather than having two inspections at different times and upsetting the owner of the property or the tenant, one fell swoop, you're there with two inspectors heading in different directions, doing different things.
Correct. And also that's why we did it. It's a value-added service for our clients because, for many years I'm booking a building inspection and then they had to go off and book a pest inspection and they had to pay two invoices, and we all know how much paperwork there is when you're purchasing a house. So we understand that we're a very important cog in that process. However, there's a lot more going on apart from building inspections. So we coordinate timber pest inspections for our clients if they want them to. One invoice makes it easy, and we can do organise that part for them.
So, all right, the building inspector knocks on the door. He says, "Right, I'm here to do a building inspection." How long does it take? What's he do?
The time taken is how long is a piece of string. It'll take as long as it takes for our building inspector to conduct
It's a single level, sort of 3-bedroom home, 150, 180 square metres.
So you'd be looking at an hour to an hour and a half on site.
Your homes obviously take longer.
And both inspectors turn up at the same time. So we always have the building and the pest inspector there at the same time, two sets of eyes. So effectively, and they'll get into anywhere they can get into, and they'll visually inspect anywhere they can see. So if they can get into the roof space, they get into the roof space, have a good crawl around. If there's a subfloor, they get themselves up to the subfloor.
I've seen people contort themselves. There's tiny little inspection trapdoors that they have there. You go, how does he get into there? More importantly, how does he get back?
Well, they want to try and get in and have a look as best they can, so they can speak for the building. The Australian standard again says these are the certain size of holes and gaps that they need to get into. But they make every effort to get into where they can safely get into.
Yeah, and roof spaces can be dangerous, can't they? Because if there's old wiring and whatever else, sometimes you say, no, we can't get into that, it's dangerous.
Well, correct. And that is something that, so a few years ago, the Department of Commerce brought out a directive which is obvious to turn off power before entering rooms. So sometimes we do come across, most people are very good, they say, yeah, we totally understand that for your safety. Other people will sometimes say that the occupants of the house will say, oh, look, that's going to turn my computer off, you can't do that. And unfortunately, if they say you can't turn the power off, we can only view the roof from the manhole or whatnot. So that can be a little bit difficult at times, but that's the thing. Safety is paramount.
That's right.
And, there are times where the guys have been in the roof and they're like, oh, it looks like there's exposed wires everywhere. You need to get an electrician in there.
Okay, so let's say you go through, and in a report there will be minor things, and there's often maintenance or suggested maintenance for the potential buyer.
Yes.
And there's occasionally something major. What sort of fraction, what sort of percentage of the time is there something major, do you reckon?
Look, it's kind of, it can ebb and flow from time to time, but I would say it's a very, very small amount, that maybe 5% of inspected houses would come across a structural defect.
Yep.
Maybe 10% might come across what's called a major defect, and I'll explain those in a minute. But effectively, most houses are in pretty good shape.
Old houses. Our housing stock's relatively young, isn't it?
Correct. I mean, this is the thing. But you don't. The thing is, you don't want to be one of those 5 or 10% that have these major or structural defects, and had foregone a structural building inspection, timber pest inspection, solely because perhaps there was other people trying to put offers in on this house as well.
Yes, you've got to look after yourself and protect yourself, and that's what you're doing. So, okay, let's look at what the nature of the reports could say. They could say there's holes in one of the two of the gutters, some downpipes discharge onto the ground. These are all minor in relation to.
They would be considered maintenance items.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't understand the difference between major and structural. Perhaps you can define those two.
So there's now there is a minor disparity in BCI WA's view between the REWA offer acceptance wording and the Australian standards. However, it does have it all in there. So as far as we can see, it's not a major structural defect within our Australian standards. There is either a structural defect or there's a major defect, right? So, because there's not, if you understand me, there's a
structural defect is a structural defect. It's major enough in its own right.
It could be a minor structural defect or a major structural defect. It's a structural defect. So there's two, under Australian Standards 4349, there's two defects in this category. There's a structural defect, and then there's the major defect. So a structural defect is classed as a fault or deviation from the intended structural performance of the building element. Now note that word performance. So the inspectors it's a performance inspection for pre-purchase building inspections, simply because it cannot be a compliance inspection. That's right. So houses that are built 20 years ago or 30 years ago are in no way, shape or form going to be fully compliant with today's codes.
That's right.
So,
and we see it a lot in South Perth where in the olden days you could discharge rainwater onto the ground.
Yes.
The old homes, probably 50, 60 years old. Nowadays, of course, has to all go into stormwater drains.
Yeah, correct. That doesn't mean that it's an issue for the structure of the house. So that things like that would be a maintenance item unless it's undermined the foundation so much, which I don't recall seeing any time recently. So effectively the inspector is doing a performance inspection of the home. He's looking at the structural elements and he's saying, he's looking at it from different ways and saying, yes, this appears to be performing well, or no, it's not performing as it should be structurally, and thus, in my opinion, it is a structural defect that requires some kind of remediation. Now, that would be like something to do with the walls, the slab or subframe of a wood floor, and the roof frame. That's effectively the extent of structural elements.
Funny enough, our old office, 240 Canning Highway, I remember John Firth climbing on the roof and said, there's an underpurlin missing in the roof. And the owner said, I'll put it back in, or put it in. It's never been there for 40 years. Underpurlin goes in, solves the problem, I buy it, everyone's happy. So I guess that's the key to this, that once you identify a structural problem, the owner has, under the offer and acceptance, the right to make good. And if he solves the problem, or he or she solves the problem, then the offer stays on foot. If they say, no, I don't want to buy it, I don't want to repair it, the buyer has an option to say, I will buy it anyway, or because you might want to knock it over, who knows, or no, if you're not going to fix it, then I'm not going to buy it. So, perhaps give us a nature. You've got an example there of what is a structural, what you've found in recent times?
So look, a good example is probably exactly what you're talking about then, the roof frame, sometimes they'll look in the roof frame if it's been changed from tile to tin over the years. This can be quite a sticking point. It can be a bit of a grey area, but that in many circumstances previously they've changed from tile to tin, so that downward forces is changed to upward forces with regards to roofs. So a tin roof acts a bit like a wing of a plane. The wind blows over it and causes uplift. So the roof frame needs to be tied down. So they haven't retrospectively tied these down when they've changed from tile to tin. So that is something that may be deemed a structural defect if it was built without those tie downs in the last 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. effectively, up to 20 years, you're kind of saying, well, this needed to be done.
Yeah, it should
And
have been
well
done.
and truly should have been done at the time. And whilst there's no signs of failure currently, it hasn't been through likely all weather conditions, so it hasn't passed the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be, then they may say, all right, so this is considered a structural defect, it needs to be retrospectively tied down, and then the negotiations start with regards to that.
When it comes to tiles, we've had these reports at times. In the olden days, you didn't have to tie tiles down.
Correct.
And nowadays, you have to tie tiles down. Is that correct?
It's the yes. So there's building practice.
Yeah, right.
So that's the compliance of the day. And look, we're not seeing too many issues with tiled roofs at all. No. And it is downward force, so it's not as if the roof's going to blow off. Yep. What you see in tiled roofs sometimes is what's called spread. So if the weight of the roof, because you might be looking at
you'll see dipping and ridge capping and things like that.
Tons of tiles on it. Yep. So it can spread from ridge capping, things like that, because they may not have installed collar ties at the time in correct spacings and things like that. So this is what our inspectors know and look for.
You don't just do building inspections, do you? The BCI does quite a lot of other things where you're doing. I remember we called you guys in when they were building next door to us, and we had a survey done of the property to make sure that there wasn't further cracking as a result of building next door. What do they call those?
That's a dilapidation survey in the industry. We call them pre-construction surveys because people often say, my house isn't dilapidated, and I understood what they, but it was just a term. Yep. So that's all it is recording the current condition of properties adjacent to a new build.
It's a wise move. If you've got a building going on next door, what's the cost of a dilapidation?
Look, you're looking at $450, maybe $500. Again, it depends on the size of the house. However, this is exactly, you're protecting your biggest investment. And if someone is building near you, if you see these building companies coming in and they haven't offered to do a pre-construction survey or a dilapidation survey on your home, ask the question. Yeah. So I'd like you to do a dilapidation survey. If you don't have someone, I can recommend someone.
Yep.
And really the builder should pay for that. But that doesn't negate the fact that the owner should probably get one done themselves too by an independent company.
Yep. Wise move. What other things do you do?
We do, so look, as far as inspections, we do problem solving or single item inspections. So people this is a good time of year of it, they might have water coming into their house, which often, in many circumstances, it might just be if there's huge deluges, no roof can deal with that water. So it might come into the eaves and then it dries out, it's fine. Other times there might be issues with rust.
With water, the leak can be right over there and the evidence is here. It isn't necessarily directly above where the leak is.
And that's why it's a problem-solving inspection. It is very investigative and you do, water, for example, follows the path of least resistance. So exactly right, could be over the other side of the roof and it's just rolled all the way down and presenting.
So you've got guys that'll climb up into roofs and try and get in and get from one location to where it's finally coming out of the ceiling.
Yeah, we do strata inspections with the Strata Titles Act changing a few years ago. It was very heavily engaged building inspectors to do 10-year maintenance and reserve fund.
That's important nowadays.
So we've been doing a lot of those over the last few years. We do asbestos registers. We're doing builder's warranty, which is
that's a good one. So the builder finishes a home, they give a warranty of 90 days, 6 months, what it would be, and you come in and just check it so that the buyer or the person building it can say you missed this, and this in the report.
So that's exactly right. You'll do the 12-month builder's maintenance, which is an important one because if things start to fall off that are non-structural and stuff, you've only got however long they've given you, whether it be 3, 6 or 12 months under your builder's warranty, and it's a very important thing to get done. And then there's the 6-year structural builder's warranty one, which is also good.
So how do they find you, Ash?
Look, if they just go online and look at bciwa.com.au and you can just fill in an easy request for quote form or just give us a call and we're happy to discuss any of your needs. Our number is 089474 5720 and we're good to go whenever you need us.
Fantastic. All right, mate. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks very much, Alan.